good evening from Synergy University. Yasmina Locke here, and tonight I'll be talking about presentation skills, which are so valuable and essential for entrepreneurs. Right, so why would presentation skills be so important for entrepreneurs? Well, obviously you'll have many opportunities to present to other people. So first of all, you'll be, of course, looking at your pitch to investors, which is very important to present your business idea, obviously, to attract funding for your venture. Another thing that is very important is that you understand that this presentation could be 10, 15, 20 minutes, but at the same time, we're looking at shorter presentations, which are elevator pitch, where you would be pitching your idea or explaining details about your company, or possibly participating in networking events where you would have opportunity to present yourself or your company or your idea or your product. Even if you're working currently in the companies, you would probably have opportunities to present, whether during the sale pitch or to pitch an idea to your boss, board of directors, etc. Also, in any case, if you would ever have to present oral reports, or if your company goes public one day, you would also have to speak to investors and present. So there are obviously many opportunities for you to do public speaking, and it's a very important skill for you. So today we're going to try to prepare you in this very short webinar to deliver very effective pitches or speeches. So in order to do that, we're going to go through a few important points. First of all, how to apply 4 cornerstones method to prepare your presentation very well. Also to how are you going to develop and organize presentation content. And last but not least, technicality of your presentation. So how are you going to use visual aids? How are you going to use supportive materials in the most effective way? Now, obviously, speaking to an audience is not always very easy. Public speaking doesn't come naturally to all of us. But in case we follow these steps, we're going to end up with doing very successful presentations. So first of all, we would have to prepare, obviously, very well, know our audience, have our objectives, our goals very clearly defined, and this should be leading to very successful presentation. So what is the 4 cornerstones method? It's something that I'd like you to sort of remember for the future. 4 basically very important points that you need to understand. So first of all, you would need to know your audience. Obviously, depending on your audience, your presentation will be very different. Your pitch will be very different, and your audience will have more or less time to hear your idea. Another thing is knowing your purpose or the purpose of your presentation, and in this case, it's your investor pitch. Also, you need to know your material very well, which I'm sure you all do because we assume that by this stage you would have your business plan prepared to detail, and you would have done market research required for you to prepare this business plan, and we obviously worked on developing your idea. Last but not the least is to know yourself. So let's see in a little bit more detail, knowing your audience. This basically, first corner of your presentation is allowing you to determine what your audience would like to hear. So the best thing would be if you could do a research on your angel investors or venture capitalists, depending who you're presenting this to. This would then determine what you should present. At this stage, it would be very good to know what industries they're coming from, what is their background. This will then determine even the terminology you're using during your presentation. And in this case, be careful. Don't use abbreviations, which are or buzzwords, which are only relevant to your industry, because they don't necessarily understand what you're talking about. So you need to maintain the clarity in this case. Another thing is to know the purpose of your presentation. So depending on the situation, you would obviously either aim at providing information or increasing awareness. You might try to change attitude, in which case you're creating certain emotion in your audience. And you also might be trying to build new skills and conduct certain training activities. Of course, in your case, the key is presenting to investors and actually attracting funding for your business venture. So, as a first step, you would try to define the purpose of your presentation, and I would suggest that when you're preparing it, you start off from trying to complete a sentence, which would, let's say, go as the result of my presentation, the audience will. And then you state what you believe is the purpose of your presentation and the audience, what are the results you're trying to achieve. The third cornerstone of presentations is knowing your material. Without it, obviously, you wouldn't even write your business plan. So your business plan is already developed in detail, and you're going to further explain this to potential investors. Know your material. When you're doing research, use the content that is taken from credible sources. This will also increase the credibility of you and your presentation. And investors will ask you a lot of questions, and you will have to provide a lot of justification and information to back your argument why your idea is so good. So make sure you're using credible sources. You will also obviously use a lot of data and statistics in your business plan, but what I would suggest is to minimize it on the slides for the presentation. Just use the relevant ones, the key ones that support your argument, because these presentations can often not be very long, and investors tend to be very busy. So in a limited amount of time, you'll have to present only the relevant statistics and data. Last but not the least, of course, is to know yourself. So in this case, try to practice presentations. This will be your style. You will be able to analyze your own style, get to know your own skills, your own strengths, and get to know your weaknesses. So in this case, try to work on developing your strengths and minimizing your weaknesses, or turning your weaknesses into strengths. Now we come to a very, very important part. I mentioned a couple of times that time is crucial when you're doing your presentations for investors. And this is the first thing you need to have in mind, the part of your presentation. Now, next thing, focus on the length of time you have at hand. So if it's a 10-minute presentation, you will have to make sure that you finish within that time frame. So this is your starting point, your objective of your presentation, and then the length of your presentation. Look at that time and break it into smaller segments. Once you do that, each segment, you look at each segment, and each segment should tackle a specific task, specific thing that you will explain, and then make sure that you can fit all the information in a very concisely presented speech to them. When you know your segments, create an outline of your presentation. So if it's 10 minutes, you're going to have obviously 3 important parts of your presentation. Well, one will be introduction, another one will be body of your presentation, and the last one, conclusion of your presentation. So at the first part, of course, your introduction, you will have to introduce yourself, trying to have a very strong opening of your presentation. This is your opportunity to talk about yourself a little bit. And this is a time when you can build credibility. Here, the good thing to do is to share successes. So if there's any point in presentation that you can talk about yourself, this is the best time, and this is the time where you can impress them with your previous successes. Not necessarily your business must have worked in companies before, and use your point them out at this stage. So introduce yourself and give a sort of personality summary at this stage and your achievements. Introduce your idea, introduce the topic, but try to engage them in a story. So in a way, because you're talking about how this product or idea solves a problem or a future problem that you assume will exist, try to relate this to the investors. They should feel that there is a certain problem in the market that you're solving for your future customers. So this is the that you can cover also in introduction briefly. So at this stage, I would say when you try to create your presentation, create a very opening by introducing yourself, trying to impress them with your achievements, and say in what way your idea will solve certain problems. The next thing you need to think about is the most important part of your presentation, and that is the body of your presentation. So really a central part. Your main points will be in the body of your presentation, and any supporting information will be located in this part. So even within the body, you can focus on 3 points. This will help you memorize the most important parts of your story, basically, that you're telling your investors. And each point should be absolutely supported with facts, with evidence, with reasons. So again, I'm going back and reminding you, using credible sources, extremely, extremely important. Now, within the body of your presentation, you will cover the most important points that your investors are interested in your pitch. So you need to cover your target market. I believe you've been just briefed before this presentation about it. So try to be realistic. Don't be overly ambitious. So try to be realistic about your target market. Obviously, if you have competition in the target market, it won't be as big as if you didn't have any competition. So make sure you take that into account. At this stage, you can explain how you would reach your customers. So this is a very important part and mostly covers marketing communications, distribution of your product or service. At this stage, you can also talk about your competition, not by focusing on them, but by focusing on what sort of competitive advantage you have. So what sort of value you're adding that your competitors don't have. So your USP should be covered at this stage. And then the point that probably interests investors the most is the revenue. So how will you make money with your business, with your fantastic idea? This is the point where you need to convince them that you will actually make money and do that. Try to address also financial projections. Try to look at 5 years financial projections. Try to also talk about your team. They are not only interested in you, but also in knowledgeable people that surround you and that can help you and support your business to grow in a very, very exciting and successful. So pay attention to them as well. And then finally, you need to express your funding needs. What is it exactly you need from them, and what is your expectation? Again, try to be realistic and fairly modest at this stage, and try to show them that, especially in the beginning, frugal side, rather than have already planned a very luxurious package for yourself and very high wage. So at this stage, try to be more frugal, more modest, and finally, try to address exit strategy, because they will want to know that as well. So at this stage, say, how do you see your business in the future, or what would happen? Would you sell your business? Would you go public? What is your plan for the future? Because they will want to know that as well. So I would say at this stage, you're creating the body of your pitch. You have all the most important points covered, everything that interests. Finally, we come to the last point of your presentation. So keep in mind, all this is happening within 10-15 minutes, depending on how much time you have with your investors. And you're focusing on your conclusion. So provide the audience with a very clear take-home message, something that will stay with them. They will, of course, after this stage, you will obviously have a lot of question answer session, and they will want to know a lot more details from you. So be prepared for that. But try to finish your presentation with a clear conclusion and a clear message. At this stage, you can summarize the main points of your presentation. So maybe one sentence for each of the parts that you had in your presentation, and have a memorable closing. Or call for action. Explain to them why are you the best potential person to invest with. And then, of course, you must allow time for questions and answers, though they might interrupt you during your presentation with questions whenever they're interested. And you should be prepared for that. So I would say, finally, create the conclusion for your pitch and have prepared closing. This is not something that you will have spontaneously or improvise. You need to have something that is solid and that you rehearse before you stand in front of your investors. Clarity and impact are extremely important in your presentation. Try to keep it short and simple. The longer the presentation, the more likely is that they will get bored or lose track of what you're talking about. So highlight always the most important parts and ensure that those are clear and with full impact, so they can memorize them easily. Of course, there's also a technical part of presentation, and I'm not sure how much opportunity you have in your current employment or companies to work with PowerPoint and other presentation tools. But these are obviously very, very important. So first of all, the most commonly used, obviously, software for presentation is PowerPoint. The Prezi is getting very, very popular, but I would suggest before you use one or the other, but I would say especially Prezi, make sure you have achieved you're proficient in using it and you're very well prepared to use Prezi. Otherwise, it can get very confusing and you do confuse yourself with technically demanding presentation. So as I said, PowerPoint or your PPT file should be there for support, for illustrating your pitch, and not as the main focus. The main focus is you and your idea. So PowerPoint should be just as a support for you in this case. I would strongly recommend never to read slides. They're there to support you, so you can refer to them. Don't be scared to look at them in case, especially if you lose track of what you're talking about, but don't read the slides. Don't read sentences on the slides. And there's honestly no need to have full sentences on the slides. Slides should be bullet points with few words at each point. Try to put very minimal content and to have maximum 6 points on your presentation slide. If you want interaction with your audience, don't turn off the lights, leave them on, and make your pitch as interactive as possible. Basically, in a well-lit room, you'll have opportunity to see their facial expression, and this is very, very important feedback for you, because you understand whether they understand what you're talking about or not, or you can go back to certain point and re-explain. What I would absolutely recommend as someone who does presentations all the time, use a wireless mouse. I'm not sure whether there is such facility where you're going to be presenting, but because you're probably going to be taking your laptop with you, you can get yourself a wireless mouse. They are very simple tools with Bluetooth, USB type of port, which you plug into your laptop, and then you can move around the room and click your slides basically through this wireless mouse. They often come with laser pointer as well, which comes in handy a lot of times. When it comes to another point with PowerPoint, people do like to use animation, but I would say use animation very sparingly, because animation can be very distracting, and you don't want anything distracting. You want them to pay attention to your idea, to you, to your presentation. So PowerPoint only as support, minimal animation, and try to use a wireless mouse. Before you start your presentation, you don't want to be distracted with any technical issues. So I would test your slide projectors, test computer that you'll be using. Make sure you save your presentation on the cloud as well as on the hard drive, and have it backed up in every possible way. When you're using graphics, and you absolutely should use graphics, because PowerPoint is such a wonderful tool which you can use to illustrate what you're talking about. Make sure that graphics are large enough. Also, if you're using graphs or diagrams, make sure the font is large enough so the audience can see it. Make sure you're using a light text on dark background or dark text on light background. Whichever it is, make sure it's very clear for everyone. Also be careful about one more thing. People do get carried away with design of the presentation slides, and they do sometimes add some animation or certain design that does not support the style of the message they're trying to convey. So if you want to attract funding for your business, unless you're into children's products, then you need to have more business-like design of your slides. And one thing I would say that is very, very important is never turn back to your audience. Sometimes we do get carried away with PowerPoint presentation slides and do start to turn back to your audience. You must never do that. This is basically an example of a bad slide, which I'd like you never to do. But you can see from it easily how poorly designed this slide is, with a lot of graphics that are not related to the idea or whatever they're trying to convey. Also, letters which are very similar shade as the background. So obviously, very difficult to follow, with too much text and different types of font on the slide. When it comes to fonts, I would just say, as a best practice, we say that sans serif fonts do not have these decorative lines like serif fonts. So make sure you're using sans serif fonts for your presentations, because it brings a clarity to your presentation. Recommended size of the font is about 24 points, which will always then keep you on track of not putting too much text on your slides. And at the same time, 20 is never too small, so everybody will be able to see it easily. So these are the typical fonts we're using on slides to have them very clear. As I said, use animation sparingly. It is more often a distraction than it benefits your presentation or attracts attention to your idea. When it comes to arranging the room, if you have opportunity to arrange the room, keep in mind I would say, just divide it into two seating options that you have here. So one is the placing chairs in semicircle, which would encourage interaction if that is your aim, or a type of theater or rows of seats placed in the room, which in a bit discourages interaction. But of course, when you call for questions at this stage, it won't matter much whether it's in a theater or a semicircle sort of a layout. I cannot stress this enough. Practice is the most important part in order to deliver a good performance. And your presentation is exactly that. It's a performance. You need to tell a compelling story. You need to be passionate about your idea, and you need to be comfortable with what you're saying. And the only way to do that is really to have several practice runs. I would suggest also something that might be bit intimidating and requires you to be very strict with yourself and to analyze yourself, and that is videotaping yourself or doing presentation in front of the mirror. It can be really difficult to do that, but once you do it a few times, you will very objectively see yourself, and you'll be the best judge of whether you need to be louder, whether your body posture needs to be better, and whether you're projecting confident image that your investors want to see. Now, when you're delivering presentation, it is very important. It is very important to vary the tone and pace of your speech. What will happen if you're using monotonous voice? All that's going to happen is that you're going to put your audience to sleep, or then they're going to stop paying attention to what you're saying. So basically, vary the tone and pace of your speech and put energy. You're all passionate about your ideas. You're all passionate about your businesses. So show them you're passionate. Show them that that what you have to offer, that you live your dream through this idea. So that's very, very important. I would say, especially with angel investors, they would be more interested in you as entrepreneur than the particular idea, and they would be very happy then to mentor you and to invest in your idea if they believe in you as a person. Also, don't try to put warmth in your voice. Try to have a fairly friendly tone. So you can be at the same time very confident. You can be very clear, but at the same time have friendly tone, which will allow them to freely ask questions and hear your idea. Another thing that is very important is that you maintain eye contact with your audience. Depending on how many of them are in the room, obviously have to maintain eye contact with them, obviously not with all of them at the same time. So in this case, pay attention to a few things. First of all, keep in mind that contact is extremely important as source of feedback. When you look someone in the eye, you see whether they're understanding what you're saying or not. At the same time, you'll be able to judge their facial expression and be able to repeat certain important points in case you judge that they don't understand what you're talking about, maybe lost track. Also, make eye contact as often as you can, but try not to do ping pong back and forth from one person in the audience to another. Be mindful of duration of the eye contact because nobody likes to be stared at for too long. And when I go through all these points and say them, that it sounds very technical. The only way to master this skill is actually to practice, practice, practice. This is the way you're going to become very confident about what you're talking about, and at the same time become very comfortable when presenting in front of audience. Posture is also very important. It's one of the most important skills for leaders to be able to command a room, and your posture is a great big part of that, really. When you're presenting, most often we would adopt a ready position, which is basically relaxed position. You're standing straight, and keep your gestures as simple as you can, but varied at the same time. So this is again another thing that you need to practice and to be comfortable with. Try to distribute your weight evenly, and try absolutely avoid crossing your arms, because this is the body language that would project you as defensive And you definitely don't want that during presenting to whether angel investors or venture capitalists or anyone interested in your business. Try to also move in the room. Don't stand still. This is again why it's important to have a wireless mouse, because it will allow you to move around the room and not being stuck in front of the computer where you have to change your slides. Don't be cemented in one place, but also don't walk too much, don't pace around the room. So just comfortable, fairly dynamic movement around the room to maintain the dynamic of your presentation. Finally, at the end, you must allow enough time for questions. And believe me, your investors will have a lot of questions. This is why we go back to the beginning, where I said you need to be very well prepared. Your material needs to be very well prepared, and you need to know answers to potential questions from your investors. So allow enough time for that. And keep in mind one thing, you might only have 5 minutes. You might not have more than that. So try to have this prepared. Try to have a short speech, 5-minute speech, where you can explain the project, when you can say enough about return on investment, and where you can talk about your growth strategy. Now, this is very challenging to have it in 5 minutes, but if you're concise and you don't overfill it with details, it can be, even though it's challenging, it can be great opportunity for you to present with 5 minutes to someone who might be very important for your business in the future. So have that in mind and have that prepared, whether you have opportunity to present it or not. Right, so we need to wrap it up now. What I would suggest that all of you, if you have time, prepare what we call elevator pitch. So very, very short speech. So you would probably end up with your business plan of, let's say, approximately 50 pages. You would end up with your presentation, which is 10 to 15 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on the timing you're given for presenting to investors. But also have presentation of about 5 minutes on those 3 important points I mentioned. And finally, an elevator pitch, which is half a minute to 1 minute, very short speech that you can use in networking events, any networking opportunity. And if finally, as it was named after, if you end up in an elevator with a person that could possibly be investor or someone interested in your idea, you can also present your idea in 20 to 30 seconds elevator ride. It is very challenging, but I'm sure you can all do it. If you're capable to write a business plan, complex business plan, I'm sure you can prepare an elevator pitch and a good presentation for your investors.